Guys, the StevenNuke has dropped. The Summer of Steven has officially started, now redubbed Steven's Summer Adventure. And for quite a few of us, I guess it actually dropped several weeks ago when this episode initially aired. This episode that I'm reviewing today is Steven Floats, the last of the French leaks that we saw several weeks ago. We saw come up online several weeks ago. And yes, I am only reviewing Steven Floats today. I know it was paired with the second episode last night, but that episode doesn't have any connection to Steven Floats at all and seems directly connected to the episode that's airing tonight. So I'm going to air both that episode, Drop Beat Dad, and tonight's episode, Mr. Greg, tomorrow. That said, since this is technically a new episode, spoiler warning, if you have not seen Steven Floats yet, you should see it before watching this review. The premise of this episode is that after all of the events with the drill and all the events with the cluster, Steven, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl have finally returned to Beach City, to Steven's house and to the temple. They have returned home. And Steven is very excited. He enjoyed staying at the barn with the gems and working with the gems, but he is really happy to be home, to have his own bed again, to have his TV again, to be able to spend time with all the people in Beach City again. In fact, one of the first things he does when he gets home is runs to the Big Donut for a snack. Unfortunately, though, the Big Donut is closed. But it turns out that they have started making fresh donuts in-house each morning. So if Steven shows up for the opening of the store the next day, he can get the first fresh donut of the day for the first time in his life, presumably. So Steven, of course, is incredibly excited. He runs back home. The excitement over the idea of getting a fresh new donut, he even sets an alarm for it, combined with the excitement he feels about returning home in the first place, gets him jumping for joy, and he jumps super high in the air and then floats slowly back to the ground, the same way that Rose was able to do. And he realizes that he has unlocked a new power. Now, that's not entirely true, but from Steven's perspective, it is. We'll talk about that in a minute. So he starts jumping all over the place, jumping super high, and eventually he jumps to the top of the temple statue, and then jumps off the top of the temple statue using his momentum, and shoots up to cruising velocity, the cruising velocity of jetliners, and is now slowly falling. And needless to say, because this is a new power, Steven has no idea how to get down to the ground faster. He's just kind of slowly drifting towards the ground. Thankfully, Amethyst sees him, though. Now, at first we get kind of a fake-out moment where we think that she's not going to realize that it's weird that he's floating in the air, which would be entirely in character for her. But thankfully she has a little bit more common sense than that and realizes that she's actually thinking of Lapis, not Steven. And so she jumps up to him enough times that he's able to get his entire story out to her, or at least most of his story out to her, and then get her to go get Garnet and Pearl. And we can see Garnet being all stoic about it. She's clearly using her future vision to look at possible futures related to this instance. And Pearl is freaking the heck out. Of course she is. Steven's at the cruising altitude of jetliners. Of course Pearl's going to be freaked out for it. They basically conclude that this is a manifestation of one of Rose's abilities. She could cause herself to float higher or fall faster by regulating her descent, they call it. I've kind of shortlisted a few of the ways that she might be able to do that, and I'm trying to figure out how those abilities would translate to an actual organic person with real mass, but That's for an entirely different video. Point is, just as Steven's unique nature somehow allows him to shapeshift as an organic being or fuse as an organic being, he can also regulate his descent as an organic being. Unfortunately, none of the other gems know how it was that Rose specifically controlled this ability, so they can't give Steven any advice on how to get down faster. So they just spend time with him. They stay with him all night and keep him company. Until finally morning comes and his alarm goes off and he realizes he's going to miss that donut if he doesn't get down right now. So they start piling stuff on top of him. They start trying to pull him down. Nothing works. He's able to continue to float at the same rate with all three gems, various smaller objects, and what looked like Yellowtail's boat all stacked on top of him. And it's at about this point that he realizes he's almost half an hour late to the big donut he's missed opening. So the gems apologize for not being able to get him down, and he starts to feel all bummed out about it. And then he realizes that he is now falling at a regular speed. Of course this new ability is tied to his motions. Steven even says so himself, "This power is tied to my emotions, just like all my stupid powers." All he had to do was figure out which emotion it was that regulated this power. Now he knows that positive emotions make him float, negative emotions make him fall. So he's able to regulate positive and negative emotions, thinking about the gems and presumably thinking about being late to get that donut, to land mostly safely behind them. And we can see that Garnet predicted this, or she predicted that he would actually land completely safely. I guess there were alternate versions where he either landed on his feet or face planted and he just happened to face plant. But she has also apparently foreseen what it was that he was so upset about and informs him that he can still make it to the Big Donut in time. So he runs over there. Turns out he'd forgot it's Sunday and that they always open at 7:30 on Sundays. So he's able to get the first donut of the day after all. And then he gets all excited, jumps up and bumps his head on the ceiling. And guys, I absolutely love this episode. It's such a fun episode. It's like a return to form for the show. It's like the crew is saying to us after so many episodes with strong story elements and a story arc, it's like they're telling us, hey guys, we do remember that this used to be an episodic show. We can still do episodic episodes that feel like part of the series that you guys loved back before everything got super heavy and serialized. And it did. Aside from the plot point about the gems and Steven returning to the temple from the barn, this episode felt like one that could fit practically anywhere in the series. I loved that it gave a pretty big role to Sadie, that we got to see her interacting with Steven in this episode. I loved that it was another Steven discovers a new power episode after so long. Was it this monumental game-changing episode that expanded the lore? No, of course it wasn't. It was just another episode of the show, and I think we need some of those every once in a while. But this episode was not entirely devoid of lore details. Seeing that Steven does possess this power and how this power works, we now know that this isn't the first time he's used it. Back in Rose's scabbard when he was jumping between the little floating platforms trying to get to Pearl. When he goes to make that last jump, he's all determined. He has a positive mindset and it looks like he's going to make it. Then he sees just how upset Pearl is and his outlook turns negative and he falls. That was the first time that I am sure, 100%, Steven used this ability. He didn't realize it, but he did. And there's a couple other little Easter eggs in this episode that I've talked about previously regarding an airliner that Steven jumps past when he is jumping high into the air. But for the most part, this was just a cute, funny, enjoyable episode of the show that didn't necessarily have to air where it did. It could have aired practically anywhere in the airing order of the show and told a simple, self-contained story. And I love that. I love the serialization that the show has been getting lately, but I think we do need more standalone episodes like this one. And I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow, indirectly. But we'll get to that when we get to that. In the meantime, guys, if you have seen this episode, what did you think of it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.